So whenever I went for interviews at investment banks, rating agencies, or other financial institutions, the topic of this video always caught me off guard when I was applying for credit risk analyst positions. Now, I was always quizzed about my knowledge of financial ratios, statement analysis, and commercial acumen. But what caught me by surprise, especially when I had my first couple of interviews, was that they were all also interested in my soft skills. And there were 5 soft skills which repeatedly came up in all of my credit risk analyst interviews. And I'm going to share them with you so that you don't get any surprises in your own interviews. So apart from sharing these interview questions, I wanted to make this video especially for those of you that haven't worked as a credit risk analyst previously, because I also want to explain why these soft skills are important in the role of credit risk. And the first soft skill that I'm going to talk about is the one which I probably struggle with the most, and that is communication. As a credit risk analyst, you might be thinking if you can dive deep into the numbers and perform the correct calculations, that's enough. And of course, numbers don't lie, but the point of being a good credit risk analyst is not just to dump numbers in front of people, but rather to explain what they mean. And this is even more important when you need approval from someone else. When presenting credit papers, whether that's through documents or talking about them in meetings, just numbers won't suffice. You need to explain why the numbers are good or bad. You need to explain why you're confident in your numbers, and importantly, you need to concisely explain your financial analysis to senior managers. Point is, if you can't communicate what your data is showing and why you've chosen to perform the analysis in the specific way that you have, your request will never be put into action. Of course, it goes without saying, your manager and other people in your department, they all understand risk. They all understand credit concepts such as liquidity. When it comes to communication with these group of people, it's about conveying your results in a concise manner. However, not everyone you deal with at work will understand the intricacies of credit risk analysis. Sales, legal, operations, there's going to be numerous teams that you'll deal with on a daily basis who won't understand financial ratios or concepts such as loss given default. Communication here means being able to convey your message, the same message that you discuss with your manager, but in a way where people unfamiliar with credit risk will understand. And that is a lot harder than it sounds. And this leads on to the second important skill for a credit risk analyst: interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills I define as the ability to get on with other people and develop the relationships that you need to get your work done. Now, you might be thinking, if work needs to be done in the investment bank, rating agency, or whatever financial institution that you're working for, it'll get done. You just need to tell people what you need and people will do it because it's for the good of the organization. Unfortunately, that's not how the real world of work is like. You see, you need to get on with people who will see your work as important for them as well as it is for you. A credit risk analyst has to get on with a range of stakeholders and have a likable personality. Before I started working, I always thought the role of a credit analyst is to just sit by themselves in a cubicle and crunch numbers, but actually a large part of a credit risk analyst's daily role will be having discussions, talking and interacting with people for a range of reasons. The more likable your personality is, the easier time people will have working with you and you getting them to work on your requests. Next, we have prioritization. So this soft skill is super important for credit risk analysts. And let me just reiterate that it is extremely important, as this comes down to the core of what an average day in the life is like for a risk analyst. Now, I've covered prioritization in previous videos, including where I take you in a normal day in the life of a credit risk analyst, and I'll have a link to one of the videos above me. But I want to drill down on this skill a bit more in this video. So you're going to have numerous projects that you'll be working on, but you'll also be working on several credit requests that will come your way throughout the day. Now, some of these requests will be easy, some will take time, and of course you can balance these requests with your projects. However, one of the big things a risk analyst has to face are ad hoc urgent requests, as well as urgent investigations into your portfolio. You see, as a credit risk analyst, you could at any time have a trader on the phone to you or someone from sales emailing you where they're talking about a big deal that has to happen today. And the deal might be extremely complicated, and it is at that moment that you'll have to decide on prioritization and decide what should be left alone for now and what should be picked up right away. Other times a credit risk analyst would have to use this skill is if there's a bankruptcy somewhere or negative market indicators for a particular industry, and it'll be your job to provide the relevant data as a result of that news. The best way I found to make sure when prioritizing your work is I always make sure to have a to-do list to make sure I don't miss any important jobs down. That way when I do prioritize my work, I always know what to do and what to come back to once that urgent task has finished. Prioritization is something that sounds simple to do, but the hardest part of the way it actually occurs at work is very likely that as a credit risk analyst, you will have a lot of people breathing down your neck for instant responses and making sure you prioritize their work. And that leads on to the next soft skill that's tested in your credit risk analyst interviews: decision making. And here specifically, I'm talking about saying no. You could say this comes under prioritization or perhaps communication, but what I'm talking about here is a little different. A credit analyst has to be able to say no to credit requests and say it confidently. You need to be able to back up what you say and stand by your decisions. And sometimes you're going to have to say no to some very senior people in your organization. That definitely is not the easiest thing to do when you're a junior employee, but it's also something which I actually enjoyed a lot when I first started out in the role. I won't talk more about this because this really comes down with time, with experience, and the more you work, the more you'll know how you can combine all of the soft skills that I've talked about so far to be effective. For example, saying no with great interpersonal skills is a valuable combination to develop. But again, you'll learn these skills in time, and during your interview, you're only going to be tested whether you understand the importance of these skills. The next one is a bit ambiguous, and that is curiosity. This is also one which will probably come in time. A credit risk analyst has to always be curious about what could happen. You definitely don't want to be someone who's always reacting to events occurring around the world because it's often too late at that moment. Of course, you can't always predict bankruptcies or negative financial market events, but you should try and be as proactive as possible. To help you, maybe look to see if there are indicators within your existing portfolio trending downwards. Maybe there's an industry where you've got higher delinquencies occurring within your portfolio, for example. Having that curious mindset will always keep you one step ahead of the market as much as possible and mitigate credit risk before they occur. A big part of being curious is asking the right questions, and I've always been impressed when managers look at my work or review documents in meetings and ask questions, and they seem like the most simple questions, and you think to yourself, how come I didn't think of that myself? But this all comes down with experience. The point to remember as a credit risk analyst is whenever you see data, always look behind it to see what is the makeup, what does it really consist of, and are there negative indicators within the data which are masked by large positive indicators, or maybe it's the opposite. Having a curious mindset will get you far in this role for sure. Now, along with these soft skills that you will be assessed in your credit risk analyst interview, the interviewer is also going to be interested on your thought process of how you view a company and the opportunities and threats that it may face. I've made a video about how to tackle those kind of questions, which I'll link after this one, so go check that out to help you in your risk interviews, and I'll see you all in the next video.